Ever feel like you're always kind of chasing after something? You know, always searching for that next thing that'll make you happy.
Yeah, like that quick burst of excitement.
But the thing is, it never really seems to stick around, does it?
It's like you're stuck on one of those treadmills.
Ugh, tell me about it.
You're putting in the effort, you're running and running, but you never really get anywhere.
That is the perfect way to put it. Like you get a little rush when you get that new phone or you finally get a promotion at work.
Right, or you have a really fun night out with your friends.
Yeah, but then it just kind of fades away and you're right back where you started, wanting that next hit of happiness.
Absolutely, and I think we've all been there.
It is so exhausting.
Oh, for sure.
Always striving for those fleeting moments of happiness.
Yeah.
But what if I told you that there's like a better way, a more sustainable path to finding happiness that doesn't just disappear as soon as you get it?
Well, that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today. We're going to be taking a look at some groundbreaking research that could seriously change how you think about happiness and, more importantly, how you actually experience it.
Okay, you've got my attention. So where do we even start with this whole idea of lasting happiness?
Well, I think the first thing is to understand that there are different paths you can take to get there.
Okay,
And there's this really influential researcher, Martin Seligman.
okay.
He's often called the father of positive psychology,
Right, I've heard of them.
and he basically outlines 3 distinct paths to happiness.
3 paths, huh? Okay, lay it on me. I want to hear more about this.
So the first one he talks about is what he calls the pleasant life.
The pleasant life, okay.
And this is the path that I think most of us are pretty familiar with.
Yeah.
It's all about, maximizing those good feelings and having those positive experiences.
So basically, enjoying those delicious meals, watching a stunning sunset, being surrounded by things that just make you happy. It sounds pretty awesome on the surface.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love a good dose of pleasure, right? But something tells me there's got to be more to it than just chasing good vibes, right?
You're right on the money with that. You see, the catch with just living the pleasant life is that even though it feels amazing in the moment, those effects are kind of limited. They're temporary.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's kind of like, imagine eating an entire giant bowl of ice cream.
Oh, this is a good analogy.
That first bite is pure heaven, right? But then after a while, it doesn't taste as good.
Yeah.
And you might even start to feel a little sick.
The ice cream analogy, I love it.
Yeah.
So you're saying you can't just like party your way to lasting happiness.
Exactly. And part of the reason for that is our capacity for feeling those positive emotions. It's partially determined by our genes.
Oh, wow.
And those feel-good moments, well, we tend to get used to them.
Right.
It's what's called habituation. That thrill just kind of wears off.
It's like the first time you drive a fancy car.
Yeah,
It's amazing, but then you get used to it.
exactly.
So, if chasing those fleeting pleasures isn't the key, what else does this Seligman guy suggest?
This is where things get really interesting. The second path is called the good life, and it's all about getting into a state of flow.
Okay, flow. I feel like I've heard of that before.
Yeah.
Can you remind me what that really means?
Yeah, so think about those times when you're like so absorbed in something that you're doing.
Okay.
You're just totally engaged. Time just flies by,
Yeah.
You're in the zone. You're using your skills. It's challenging enough to keep you interested, but it's not overwhelming you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
That's flow.
Got it.
And Seligman actually talks about this friend of his, Len. Len was an options trader. And he totally found this sense of flow in his work. Get this, he wasn't naturally a super cheerful guy.
So what you're saying is even if you're not like the life of the party, you can still experience that deep happiness by finding activities that really, truly engage you.
That's it. It's all about tapping into your unique strengths and finding things you're good at, activities that really fit with your natural talents.
I love that. Now, I remember you mentioned a third path, right? Something about living a meaningful life.
You got it. The meaningful life, that's the third path. And it's all about belonging to and serving something bigger than yourself.
So we're talking about like joining the Peace Corps or becoming some big-time activist?
Not necessarily. It's more about figuring out what your values are.
Okay.
And then finding ways to contribute to something you truly believe in. It could be your community. It could be a cause you're passionate about. It could be your family even.
Right.
Or even just your work. It's about having that feeling that what you're doing is actually making a difference in the world around you.
So it's less about feeling good and more about doing good.
You got it. And here's the really interesting part. Seligman's research actually found that having meaning in your life, that's the strongest factor in how satisfied you are with your life overall.
Wow.
And then comes engagement. Just going after pleasure on its own, well, that has a surprisingly small impact.
Hold on. So you're telling me that a life that's packed with all these fun experiences, but without any real meaning, that might not actually be as fulfilling as we think.
That's what Seligman's research suggests, yeah. He talks about the empty life, you know? It's a life without pleasure, engagement, or meaning.
Right?
And he compares that to the full life. And for a truly full life, he says you got to have all three of those pieces working together.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It's not just about grabbing those quick hits of joy, but about creating a life that's full of positive experiences, where you feel connected to something bigger than yourself and you have a real sense of purpose.
You're getting it.
This is so cool.
And there's this framework that can help us understand all this even better. It's called the PERMA model.
PERMA. What is that? Tell me more about this.
Mm.
I am so intrigued, and honestly, I'm eager to learn how we can actually put these ideas into practice in our own lives.
So PERMA, it stands for positive emotions,
Uh-huh.
engagement relationships, meaning
Gotcha.
an accomplishment.
So it's kind of like a checklist for, like, a good life.
Yeah, you could kind of think of it that way.
Okay.
It's basically highlighting these 5 core areas that really contribute to having a flourishing life.
I like it.
And there's actually like a souped up version of it called PERMA,
Movie.
which adds vitality to the mix.
Yeah, vitality. Now we're talking. What did that mean?
It's all about things like having good physical health, feeling energized, being resilient, you know, being able to bounce back from those tough times. It's about feeling really alive and vibrant.
So it's not just about, like, your mental and emotional health, but also taking care of your physical well-being and having the energy to actually go after the things that matter to you.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really exciting. There are actual things we can do,
Okay.
like specific things called positive interventions, to actually build up these elements in our own lives.
Okay, positive interventions. I'm
Yeah.
all about practical tips. So give me some examples.
Well, think about gratitude exercises.
Okay.
Like taking a few minutes each day to just think about what you're thankful for that
Okay.
can seriously impact how you feel.
Makes sense.
Or how about acts of kindness?
Oh.
Even little things like
Yeah.
helping out a neighbor or giving a stranger a compliment.
Right.
Those can actually lift your mood and kind of create this ripple effect of positivity.
That's awesome. So it's like we have the power to kind of create our own happiness through these little actions.
Exactly. And then there's this idea of designing a beautiful day.
Ooh, I like that.
Imagine waking up and you intentionally plan your day so that it's full of activities that bring you joy, that
Yeah.
connect you with people you love, and that make you feel fulfilled.
Okay, I can totally get behind that idea.
Yeah.
It's like you're taking charge of your happiness instead of letting it be controlled by whatever's going on around you.
You nailed it. And remember those strength dates we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier? It's about finding ways to use your strengths in your relationships and activities on purpose.
Okay.
This could be anything from volunteering together to working on some kind of creative project, or even just having a deep conversation about the things you're both passionate about.
I love that.
And here's the best part. These positive interventions, they're not just some fluffy feel-good stuff.
Oh, really?
They're actually backed by science. There's tons of research out there,
Wow.
including studies that used placebos
Oh, well,
to prove how effective they really are.
that's so cool. So it's not just wishful thinking. There's real evidence to support these practices.
Absolutely. It's about taking real steps, steps that are rooted in research to actually build a happier and more fulfilling life. But here's the thing.
Okay.
Building a happier life, it's not like a destination, you know? It's more like a journey.
So it's more about enjoying the process.
Yeah.
Trying out different things and figuring out what really works for you.
You got it. And it's super important to be patient with yourself. There are going to be days when it's harder to stay positive, you know,
Right.
or to do those things we were talking about. But the key is to keep coming back to those core ideas of PERMA-V, those building blocks,
Right.
and to keep trying things out till we find what really helps us thrive.
You know, this deep dive into happiness has been so insightful. I'm seriously inspired to start putting these ideas to work in my own life. But before we wrap up, I have one question that's still kind of bugging me.
Okay.
We've talked about the full life versus the empty life.
Right.
But what if we find ourselves somewhere in the middle?
Yeah.
What if we're not totally miserable,
Yeah.
but we're not exactly thriving either?
That's such a great question. And I think a lot of people are probably in that spot. You know, you're not necessarily struggling, but you just feel like there's more to life.
Right.
There's more joy, more fulfillment out there waiting to be discovered. I think that's the perfect time to start asking yourself, like, What's one small change I can make to inch a little closer to that full life?
So you're saying we don't have to go from 0 to 60 overnight. We could just make those small, intentional changes that take us in the right direction.
Exactly. And those small steps, they can really add up over time.
Yeah.
It's like that saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
I love that. So instead of getting all overwhelmed by the big picture, we can just focus on making one positive change today and then another one tomorrow. And slowly but surely, we start to create a life that's more in line with what we believe in and brings us more joy and fulfillment.
That's the beauty of positive psychology. It's not about trying to reach some perfect ideal of happiness that's impossible to achieve.
Right.
It's about embracing the journey of growing and constantly looking for ways to improve our well-being.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. It's amazing how much we can learn from positive psychology and how much it can actually help us in our daily lives. I feel so inspired to start putting these ideas into practice. But before we say goodbye, I have a feeling you have a few more thought-provoking questions up your sleeve for our listeners, don't you?
You know it. I always like to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay, hit me with those final questions. I'm taking notes here.
So, first, let's think about this. If happiness is a skill, are we actually putting in the time to train it?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Or are we letting it just kind of fade away?
Yeah,
Think about all the effort we put into learning something new,
right.
like a language or how to play a musical instrument. Are we doing the same thing for our happiness?
That's such a great point. It's easy to just kind of cruise through life and forget that we can actually work on being happier.
Mm.
Okay, what's the next one?
So, what if instead of always chasing after those quick bursts of pleasure, we focused on building a life that's really rich in meaning, in engagement and connection? What would that look like for you?
Hmm, that's a really powerful question. It's like you're encouraging us to rethink what we prioritize in life and figure out what truly matters. Okay, give me that last question.
All right, let's wrap up with a question that gets you taking action. What's one specific thing you can put on your calendar for next week
Okay.
that would bring more meaning or more engagement into your life?
Love that you're pushing us to make concrete plans. Maybe it's finally starting that volunteer project you've been thinking about, or having a deeper conversation with someone you care about, or even just making time for a hobby you haven't touched in a while. Doesn't have to be a huge thing, just a step towards that full life we were talking about.
You got it. Remember, we have way more control over our own happiness than we realize sometimes. It's not just something that happens to us. It's something we got to work for, something we build, something we choose.
This whole conversation has been such an eye-opener. It's amazing how much we can learn from positive psychology and how it can actually help us in our everyday lives. I'm definitely feeling inspired to put these ideas into action.
That's awesome. And remember, even a journey of 1,000 miles starts with that first step.
And that first step could be as simple as choosing to focus on what we're grateful for, being kind to a stranger, or doing something that just makes us happy.
Exactly. And the cool thing is, the science of happiness is always evolving, so keep exploring, keep learning, and keep choosing happiness. It's been such a pleasure diving into this with you.
It's been amazing talking about all this with you.
And to all our listeners out there, if you want to stay in the loop, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. It really helps us grow, and hopefully it helps you grow too. Until next time.